watching and listening to Breakfast with Nana Aquia and Martin Daubney. Well, let's take a look at today's front pages now.
Well, let's take a look at the Mirror first. Welcome on board, Nigel Nelson. On the front of the Mirror dedicates its front page to the Brazilian football icon Pelé, who has died aged 82 following his battle with cancer.
And the Times leads on claims by ministers that the cost of strike action will force unions into climb downs as soon as the spring.
And the Telegraph reports Rishi Sunak is considering the return of restrictions for arrivals from COVID-hit China, with the Health Secretary meeting Sir Chris Whitty and Jenny Harris.
The Mail reports that millions of families are struggling with an average of over £16,000 in personal debt as unsecured borrowing hits record levels.
And on to the Independent. NHS leaders have warned that the health service is not equipped to tackle the so-called parallel pandemic of mental health exacerbated by lockdown and the cost of living.
My favourite part of the show now, time to go inside the papers with the political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, and my long-term sparring partner, so happy to work with you again, Liz Kershaw. Well, I'm so happy about it.
We were separated by Brexit, weren't we?
We worked together for a long time on another broadcaster, and you and I were great partners, and I'm so chuffed to have you back.
Anyway, I'm filling up.
Should we talk about us ourselves?
You know, it's taking me back with Nigel. I've never worked with you.
Shall we just go and get a room? Nigel, let's start with you to prove we have balance. It's the front page of the Times, and it's that story about the unions climbing down.
It is indeed, and it's a bit of sort of government spin here, because the prediction is that the unions will run out of money come springtime. That still means we've got about sort of 3 months of strikes left, which I think would be is still a bit frightening. I mean, broadly what happens is that the unions pay out strike pay. It's roughly £50 a day. There's also hardship funds for people who are particularly suffering. And there's some figures bouncing around saying, although the Royal College of Nursing, for instance, has got £50 million tucked away for strikes, if 100,000 nurses go out, it'll cost them £5 million a day. I think we're getting to a situation where the government are quite clearly intending to tough these strikes out. I think you said earlier, Martin, that it was a bit like the way that Thatcher dealt with the miners. Yeah. We're in a whole different situation here. Thatcher was dealing with the miners, which was a political strike. These are a selection of strikes based on pay and conditions.
Oh, come on, Nigel, they're also political strikes.
I don't accept they're political. If they start getting political, then they're losing the plot. The whole point is that they are individual.
Let's bring Liz into that point. Liz, they are political strikes. I mean, the new TUC leader, Paul Novak, said yesterday, we're looking at coordinated strikes soon. That's moving into the territory of the old days that you and I remember of general strikes, isn't it?
Yeah, the TUC is also saying in another article I read today, let's get real nurses, 19%, it's not achievable, think again. But two things I'd like to say about these strikes. I think we are being bamboozled in this country by lack of information. You've got to dig deeper and look abroad to find out what's going on. It's not in any of the many of the newspapers or in the broadcast media. Who knows, unless they look themselves, what's going on in the rest of Europe. Yeah. And particularly our nearest neighbour, France, because I've got friends there. There are strikes in the health service, doctors, GPs, consultants, nurses. People can't get appointments, they're queuing at A&E.
Is that because of Brexit?
No, Martin, it's because their health service workers are also striking, as are airport workers, mail workers, you name it. So it's not just particular to this country. I'd like to say that first, because we're beating ourselves up in this country. Yeah. Oh, it's all going down the pan. Actually, it's a pan-global economic crisis. The second thing I'd like to say is strikes. What strikes?
Well,
we are given the impression that these are blanket. Well, they're not. They're working around them. It's not hard to circumnavigate them, because the actual facts are that, for instance, in the NHS, the nurses strike, only 40 out of 125 trusts are affected. Okay. So we've not got strikes at our hospital. We've had the post every single day. Our postal lady says, I don't want to strike.
I just want to say about those strikes as well, they're scattering themselves because the postal strike has resulted in the balance for the other strikes not getting in on time.
Yeah, let's move on from strikes. I'm being told to move on from strikes.
Yeah,
we'll have loads of strikes later on. Liz, let's go. I'm sure they won't go.
I'm going on strike if I don't get a sausage butty at 7 o'clock.
Well, don't go strike after the butty run. Liz, let's go back to you. The Telegraph front page talking about the COVID travel curbs or not coming to Britain.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because we were all told that the government was following the science last time, and we were thinking back. It's so 1984 when you think every tea time we were glued to our tellies to see what Whitty and Valence had to say, and hung on to their every word. And there were dissenters getting through, but they didn't get the coverage. It was hard to hear those voices. Anyway, there's much debate now, and there's even a public inquiry into whether it was handled properly and whether or not we should have been locked down at all. So I'm no scientist,
but they got it wrong.
But we'll find out the facts.
But what about
this time? So this time, what view do you take? Because March 2020. Everybody's crying, our government's too slow to close the borders. They've closed the borders in Italy, they've closed the borders in other European countries. We haven't. That's why so many people have died. It's escalated because we didn't act quickly.
But if you didn't believe in lockdowns then,
no, I did.
Do you believe in restrictions now?
I did believe in lockdowns then. Why wouldn't I, Martin? I was being told that if I went out and touched something or stood next to somebody who breathed on me, I could end up on a ventilator. That's what we're being told.
But what about this time?
This time I'm more cynical. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
And apparently the people that are going to wheel out later today to tell us are Whitty and Valence.
Well, I shan't listen to that, Nigel.
Jenny Harris.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is not talking about keeping people out. This is talking about testing people coming in. So, I mean, the US, Japan, India have started doing it. Italy is the most interesting one because what they'll do is they'll do proper genome testing. And I'd be in favour of that in this country if we were doing it. What we need to know is there a new variant coming through that may escape the vaccine?
There's no sign of that at all yet.
No, that's true. None of that is actually happening, but if you were doing the genome testing, you can monitor the kind of changes in the virus, and that's the only point I can see of doing it. If there is a variant, the variant's here, we just need to make sure we can find it, so it'd be too late to test anyone now.
The Chinese apparently are not being very transparent about the thing that is there, and there might be, what they have is the perfect melting pot for that virus to change to where we aren't protected.
Yes, that's right,
It just seems a bit ludicrous that people aren't prepared to be testing them. If you're coming from China, they should be tested at least, so you can at least check the sequencing.
But I think that's my point. You're testing them for a purpose, not just to see if they've got COVID.
By the way, if you were going to Barbados today, as I know people who are, you had to get a PCR test to get on the plane or get in the ship or enter into Barbados. So it's more widespread still than we know.
Okay, Nigel, the Guardian is having a go at the Conservatives. Hold the front page. This time, 1 in 10 Tory peers have given more than 100 grand to the party. So
yes, well, I mean, the total is even higher. It works at about 50 million if you take everything together from Tory peers.
Over what period of time, though?
Well, this is the whole lot. So, I mean, this is over years. But it does call into question once again about how we award honours. Should you actually, this is like a cash for honours thing, should you simply give a lot of money to a party and then get a seat in the House of Lords? I mean, the Guardian focus on Dominic Johnson, who was a former business partner of Jacob Rees-Mogg. He gave 300,000. He's in the House of Lords. He is a trade minister on the back of that. And the question is, should we de-link the money that people are giving to political parties with the honours they get? The honour should be for doing something extraordinary, not for having a load of dosh.
But then Labour give their lackeys a lot of peerships as well, don't they?
I would scrap the House of Lords.
Right, that's what
exactly. I'd have 2 elected houses.
Keir Starmer wants to do
dangerous.
Yeah, obviously me and Keir have been getting our heads together over Christmas.
Obviously.
No, I would have 2 houses. One, I think there's 2 roles for a member of Parliament. One is to represent constituents with their real problems, like potholes and, you know, local issues, take them to the top on behalf of the constituents. The other role is legislature, and I would have two houses, one that was about representing the very core of the constituents, and the other one which was for thinking a bit higher.
Have you ever thought about getting into politics? I wanted to ask this for some time because you're very, very, you know, gregarious. People like it. People know you. You've got common sense opinions. Would that be a route you'd be interested in taking?
It's hard work.
So,
I would love it, but I couldn't be doing with the potholes and Leylandii trees. I'd want to be.
That's important bit.
I'd like to be, you know.
Home Secretary or Foreign Secretary or something.
Oh, I'd love to be Culture Secretary.
Yeah, you'd be good at that.
I would sort out certain broadcasters straight away.
Okay, so something else you might be able to deal with in government is the front page of the Mail today. We talked about this, the growing debt. The Resolution Foundation finding over 16 grand of personal household lists.
This is completely at odds with articles I was reading earlier this week, which is that, for example, people are just stampeding to buy holidays. Sales for package holidays, etc., are just through the roof.
Well, obviously, credit cards. That's what this is about.
Well, no. The argument in this was that there's so much built-up money, and I can say that, not me, but people who that I know previously had to commute into London every day for £7,000 a year, after nearly 3 years, are sitting on quite a stash. I mean, there's one person who's doing that, still working from home. We got the most lavish gifts this Christmas. I was gobsmacked. He's just got more money because he's got more disposable income. So there's and the other thing is £16,000. Yeah, it's a lot of money. That's unsecured debt. That's not your mortgage. That's unsecured debt. But if you've got a car loan, that easily is 16,000. It doesn't necessarily mean that people are loaded up on the credit cards. If they are, and if they are having to borrow just to put food on the table, that's terrible. But I'd like to get more information. This is from Price Waterhouse.
I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. I'm sure most families more than £16,000.
Yeah, well, I do think that people are going into more debt at the moment. We all saved a bit of money during the pandemic.
I didn't.
Some people didn't have any money at all.
Well, it obviously depends.
Any help whatsoever, like the 2 million people.
I wasn't thinking as much about the help, but those people who were working from home and didn't have to commute, there was a certain saving from that. But we are under Office of Budget Responsibility figures. We're facing, over the next 2 years, the worst fall in living standards since the 1950s. And that will actually just exacerbate debt along the way.
Okay, so moving on. Sad news, yet time always, I think, to look back and celebrate. We're talking about the sad death of Pele, of course, the king, and you're picking this up, Nigel, front page of today's Daily Mirror. They call him the best.
Yes, indeed, and I think that's probably the best headline in any of the papers this morning. The Mirror is devoting 8 pages to Pele. There's a 12-page pull-out in the Times, and just by looking at the papers, you can see what an extraordinary, iconic figure he actually was. Here's somebody who's got so many records, that 3 World Cups under his belt, that kind of thing.
Twice as captain, never repeated.
Yeah, and the number of goals, almost as many goals as matches that he played. I mean, I can sort of as a small kid remember kind of growing up with him and thinking what a nice man he seemed to be. And we've seen the way he treated Bobby Moore as an example of the picture in the front page.
We have a front page actually, I think. Can we pull that up, please, of the Daily Star? Because this picture, I think, is not I think it's the greatest footballing picture of all time. Can we see it there, look? See, what had happened there is that Brazil had just knocked out England, the reigning champions in 1970 in Mexico, 1-0, and Moore, the England captain, Bobby Moore, swapped shirts with Pele, and look at how he caresses him and comforts him. You know, a black player, a white player, 1970. What a fantastic image of brotherhood. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful image. I really do.
And that's the point, and that's the kind of character that Pele was. And I just think that there's so much coverage. It just shows that he spanned the generations as well. It wasn't just back in the 1970s. It is the kind of reputation he had all the way through. And
you know, that final in 1970, my mum was in labour with me during the final when Pele scored against Italy. My dad was downstairs, I was bored at home, and my dad didn't want to stop watching the football to come and see me. I was bored. Cheers, Dad, I think he's watching. But that's how momentous Pele was as a player. So, one final story, Liz, coming to you. This is about police recruits dropping out. So Boris Johnson promised to get 20,000 new coppers to make up for what Theresa May took away. Yeah. And apparently the recruits are falling away. Why is that?
Well, they had to blame it on Boris, didn't they? Had to feature in the headline. It's Boris's fault. Nearly 2,000, so nearly 10% have dropped out. But the reasons were given are that it's too hard.
These are graduates, aren't they?
Well, they're not. No, you don't have to enter as a graduate. You can join the police, but you do have to have the equivalent of a degree course in tandem to doing your practical policing work.
Is it the paperwork that's putting them off, or the beat work?
It says here, some chief constables have suggested that too many people have joined the police force in recent years with unrealistic expectations, including the job, including the requirement to work antisocial hours and deal with confrontation.
You're a copper.
What's the point then? Why did they join?
One of them only lasted 6 months. Several new recruits highlighted struggling to juggle academic learning on top of police training. They were talking of the pressure of uni work alongside the full-time job. So I think it's like nursing. Why does everybody have to have a degree? Yeah. My auntie was an SEN, state enrolled nurse, and her job was to keep patients clean, make sure they were fed, change their dressings. She didn't actually, working class, she didn't have a degree, and then the higher qualified ones could get on with administering drugs and etc.
I'm all for those sort of people.
So we should have those in the health service. We should also have, you don't have to have brains as well as brawn. You could be a great copper. You know, I went out with a policeman when I was just out of university. He was 6'4", big, hunky, blonde, bit thick, but he plodded the streets. He did his community. Hiya, Paul.
If you're
we didn't laugh. But there was room for him in the West Yorkshire Police, just as much as there is.
Nigel, is this just people? Is it work shy Britain? They're signing up to be a copper and suddenly, it's quite hard work and there's confrontation. Smell the coffee time.
Well, I just think that an awful lot of people leave jobs when they try them out because they just don't like them. The whole thing is that it may well be this recruitment process was rather rushed. Boris Johnson promised these 20,000 extra officers. That's purely to fill the gaps left by the Tories getting rid of 20,000 officers during the time of austerity. He's got now, not he, but the government have now got till March to meet that target, and there's still 5,000 short, and obviously these people leaving that doesn't actually help the target.
Okay, we've got to wrap it up there, Nigel. There'll be plenty of opportunities to bash the Tories in the next hour. Liz, it was worth the wait. Great to have you back. Let's move on. Thank you both very much. See you in an hour's time.
See you shortly. Well, if you just